We can get one negative comment and, 50 positive ones, but what do we focus on the negative? I mean, I think that's our human nature.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really, being intentional about, when I have those difficult seasons, those difficult days, to just kind of stop, take a deep breath, and remind myself that there's a whole lot of good things going on, and that I need to focus on the good things that are going on.
Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. I, as always, am so glad you decided to check in today. And you're going to be glad you did, because this is going to be a special episode as we begin season number 2. Now, this is the first week, and we're going to kind of take some time this month to talk about mental health awareness. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. And next week, by the way, we have a psychiatrist that's going to come and visit us, and we're going to talk about mental health. We're going to talk about what it really is, and you'll have to be sure and come and check it out. Dr. Gordon's an incredible person and a really good communicator. But today, my guest is none other than my beloved Mrs. Is it Miss? No.
Mrs. Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie.
Mrs. for married.
They put your name up on the screen so I wouldn't forget
so you
it.
wouldn't forget my name?
Probably wouldn't forget your name. Mrs. Stephanie Gramling, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be on the best podcast out there.
Well, I did a little research, and there are between 3.5 and 4.5 million podcasts in the world.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. And yours is the best.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And the new ones are starting every day.
Yeah.
So a lot of competition. But if there's something that you hear today that inspires you or encourages you, be sure and pass it along. It never hurts to share with somebody something that impacts you, and it also helps us out as well. It's all about the algorithm. And so a thumbs up, or if you got a question or a thought, a comment, leave it below, and we'll do the best we can to get back with you, kind of interact and build a community, because at the end of the day, that's the whole reason we're doing this. We're going to talk a little bit about leadership. We're going to talk about ministry. We're going to talk about those things, because that's what we do, you might say full time.
Yeah.
This is a tool to partner so that together in community, we can become better leaders, reach our potential, impact our families, make more money, find greater joy, all those kind of things. And today, that is true as well.
Yes.
So hit the bell, subscribe, share, leave a comment, do all the things you're supposed to do. And together, we shall journey. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here.
So I thought, since it's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
For some reason, I struggle to say that. I thought we would talk a little bit about ministry and our journey and some of the challenges. And, in some ways, ministry is different than other leadership. And in other ways, it's very similar. Mm-hmm. So do you remember the year when I shared with you, I felt nudged, for lack of a better word. I don't remember the year, because we were already volunteering.
Right. We were married. I mean, it was in the beginning of our marriage. I don't know, maybe the
Do you remember when we were married?
Year, or what year? Of course, 1989.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah. Did you remember?
Of course I did. Yeah, because we were volunteers.
Yeah.
They started out. I don't remember. Well, we went to Finch
Baptist Church,
kind of out in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
We got married, and we went there together. When we were dating, we went to Walcott.
Yeah.
And
Walcott Baptist Church.
Because you hadn't really grown up in church.
Yeah.
And so you went with me to Walcott. Mm-hmm. And they had a young adult class. I always remember they had a young adult class. The pastor taught it.
Yeah.
Because it was a smaller church, a few hundred people. And like he'd talk about dating and all that stuff, and sometimes we'd be the only ones in
Yeah,
there.
exactly. I remember that too.
And we hadn't been dating a long time.
No, it was a little bit awkward, but we were faithful and committed.
Yeah. Do you remember the pastor's name?
At Walcott, the pastor's name?
Yeah.
I do not. I'm thinking of Junior Vester.
Junior Vester
He's actually the one that married us.
Yes.
I
You
can't
remember what he
think.
looked like?
I do remember what he
He
looked
had
like.
mustache. Brother Buzz.
Buzz, yeah.
I don't remember his
wouldn't
last
remember
name.
that.
I don't remember his
Yeah.
last name, but
Yeah.
And then after we got married, of course we, got a house or an apartment and all that stuff, and ended up at Finch.
Yeah.
And Junior Vester was the pastor there. The reason we went, he was my pastor when I was a kid.
Yeah.
At Calvary Baptist Church. So we went out there, and I'll never forget, we were sitting there, and they needed somebody to teach the youth.
Yeah.
And we had no idea how to do it, but I guess in some sense we've always kind of heart for the next generation.
Yeah.
Even when we were probably young enough to be considered the next
Right,
generation,
right.
Because we'd been 22, 23.
Yeah,
I
we were
would have.
early 20s, yeah.
And, but again, it was as a volunteer. It wasn't like this call to vocational ministry. It was just to.
Yeah, because at the time we were we still in college? I think we were still in college at the time. We were going into, both of us into education. When we first met, actually my degree, I was going into fashion. And then, you were going into education, going to be a coach, and we're like, I'm not sure how those two are going to, because I had dreams of, like moving to New York or Dallas or somewhere like that, and doing fashion, and but my whole family is in education, and it just made sense. You were going into education and coaching, and we had not felt at that time the call to ministry, the nudge to ministry.
And I think your parents had bigger dreams for you than me.
Maybe at the time, but now they're good with you now.
Oh, it's only taken 35 years.
Yeah, no, they.
But
way before
but we
that.
finally arrived.
Yeah.
But yeah, we volunteered and had no idea what we were doing, but we loved the kids, and then we got that was all volunteer, and then we ended up at Mount Zion.
Yeah.
I remember I had played softball with those guys, and they were going to pay us I can't remember.
Yeah.
A little something, but that little something always mattered.
It did. And at the time, it seemed like huge.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember it seeming like huge.
It did to me after, because we were in school, and I think you were working at the softball fields, and I was, I don't know, maybe working at a clothing store and doing a paper route at night. And
yeah, we're doing everything we could. And they offered us some money, and
I want to say it was like $100 a week or
no, it was $75.
$75.
And I don't know if it was a week. It might have been a month.
Oof, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't
Yeah,
big
it wasn't.
money.
No, it wasn't. At the time, it seemed.
But we loved on those kids, and then the pastor left.
Yeah.
Or kind of got run out,
Yeah.
the way churches are. And, I filled in basically,
Yeah.
While he was gone. Never really thought about, being the pastor there.
Right,
And kind of in that meantime, because we were finishing up school.
Yeah.
And I was planning on being a coach. And at the same time, we were living in an apartment. I just remember standing there at that bar and telling you, I think this is, that God's, calling or nudging my heart towards vocational ministry.
Yeah.
And, that's not who you married. You didn't marry a preacher. And,
Yeah. And it caught me off guard. I mean, I'm not really sure why, because, we were doing ministry, with the, volunteering for the, student volunteer pastors. I'll never forget. Yeah. That small little bar in that tiny little apartment. And, it kind of caught me off guard. Because, in my mind, I think we were in our last year of college and, finishing up, and you were going to coach and teach, and I was going to teach, we just, in my mind, it was all planned out.
And your dad was a superintendent, so he was going to be able to help us out.
So so we were pretty sure we were going to be able to get jobs, and then you shared that with me, and that was like, what?
And I did get a job offered at a different school, Stanford.
Yeah.
Offered me a coaching job, a coaching and teaching job at about the same time. Because what happened at the church is I filled in, and then one of the deacons, leaders there, took me out on a John boat.
Yeah.
If you don't know what that is, it's like a green metal boat that people would use for fishing. And we were out there fishing, and I remember saying, well, have you guys found somebody? Because it had taken them a little while, and they hadn't found anybody. And he said, well, we were kind of thinking you might do it.
Yeah.
And that had never crossed my mind. I had never thought about that. And in my mind, I go from there remembering they would vote on it. Like the whole congregation would vote on it.
Yeah.
And
had to vote on everything.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And they voted yes. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the biggest mistake they had made because it did the yes wasn't yes very long.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
And small churches have power bases, and I was young and passionate, and we saw the church grow. We did some cool things.
We did,
The church was probably running, I don't know, 100 people or so, and we saw 300 or 400 people start attending, and we put on. Easter plays, and I would write them. And
you did.
I remember the first one we did. We had almost everybody at the church was involved in it. And they were like, "Who's going to watch it?" And I learned something there. I learned that the more people you engage in something, then the people engaged invite other people.
Right.
Yeah,
because I remember those early days, and we would do those plays, and we would just be packed. I think, even there were even years we would do multiple nights in a row because we had so many people, coming to, our small little auditorium. But
So we got fired from there. And,
we did.
That was a painful experience, and then a few years later we started a church, and we actually did one of those plays in the local theater.
Yeah, we did.
Collins Theater, it was called, and several nights. And I just share all that to remind folks who are in the beginnings of the journey. Yeah. First of all, what are some of the things that, when you think back, that you learned in those, early days?
I mean, oh gosh, I learned a lot of, I think for me, because not growing up really in church. My parents went when I was, very young, but then they went through a long season where we just, weren't really connected, involved in church. And so for me, I remember when you shared that with me about being called to, to ministry, it terrified me because I had no idea. Wait, I don't know what this means. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, what I'm not supposed to do. So, I feel like in the early days, I was just learning everything about ministry. The good and the bad. There's great things about ministry, awesome things about ministry, but there's also some difficult, challenging parts about ministry. I think for me, one of the things, that sticks out the most is, I thought all Christians, all believers, all people that came to church, it was just going to be a big, happy, no problems, no, everybody got along. And, I realized real quick, that's not always the case. We're all people. And, like you say often, we bring our peopleness with us, and, sin and our flesh gets involved. And so I learned real quick that, that's not always the case. And, that there's going to be painful seasons of ministry. That's part of it. Jesus never said that it would be easy. And, we have had a lot of painful seasons in ministry, people that, that we trusted and all that, that walked away, and that we thought would be with us forever. And So, there's been a lot of those. There's been a lot of way more great seasons of ministry, but there's also been, the painful, difficult, challenging seasons.
Yeah. Getting fired doesn't mean that you have failed.
Right.
It depends on why you get fired.
Right.
It's like persecution.
Yeah.
Just because you're persecuted doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you're doing things the right way.
Yeah.
The Bible says getting persecuted
Right.
for being a Christ follower, if they're
Right.
persecuting you because you're following Christ, not,
Yeah.
sometimes as Christians, we just do whatever we want. And then if we get persecuted,
Right.
we're like, well, it's like, no, that's not really why your neighbor's upset with
Yeah.
you. They're upset because your dog,
Right.
keeps eating their flowers or
Right.
something. And that has nothing to do with being
Yeah.
a Christ follower. But,
Yeah.
but we got, basically fired
Mm-hmm.
from Mount Zion because power,
Right.
family power. And I always have a tendency to kind of upset the apple cart.
rock the boat,
Yeah,
yeah.
to rock the boat, as people say. We went out, and this is years ago, so technology was different.
Yeah.
And we bought, what was that called?
It's like a telecommunications machine.
Yeah, you could put in, this is before the phone. I mean,
Yeah.
the smartphones and all that. And so you could program like the congregation's number, everybody's phone number, and you could record a message.
Right.
And at a certain time, and it was hard copy, like it was a cassette tape that
Yeah.
you recorded it
Yeah.
on. It wasn't
Yeah, you're
digital.
dating us
yes,
now.
it wasn't digital at all. But you would put in the number and it would call at a certain time. So I thought, this would be cool. And so I would record a devotion
Yeah.
and send it out to those who wanted it in the mornings. I would have it call through the whole role of the church from time
Yeah.
to time. Hey, is there anything that you need? And so it was cool. And the deacons, the leadership team, voted for it. But I realized that just because people vote for things
Right.
doesn't mean they're going to support it,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
stand behind it or stand behind you. And so that kind of caused, a little bit of an upset.
Yeah, kind of the beginnings of the trouble.
As soon
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I was gone, they sold that thing.
They did.
At a
They
loss,
did. Yeah.
And they had a basement, and I just remember the meeting. And there's about 6 or 7 deacons who were the leadership team, and they voted for it. We went out and we got it, and
Yeah.
they didn't like
They
it.
didn't like it.
And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they just didn't like it because I liked it,
Right. Well, and I think the money that was spent on it,
probably.
like you said, it kind of a power thing. And
So and then the other thing was, the deacons had asked me to challenge somebody.
yeah.
And, they were leading, but they weren't necessarily the way they were living their life didn't match up to what they were doing.
Right.
And they came up to me and said, what do you think? And I went, wow, it's not very good. And what do you think we ought to do? Well, we, should challenge them
Right.
in an encouraging way, but challenge them. And I set up that meeting and I went by one of the deacons and I'm like, I'm meeting with them. And today, I would know, but he said, don't mention my name.
Right. And that should have been a good sign,
That
right?
should have been a red flag to call off the meeting because I
Yeah.
had the meeting and, they had family members and things
Yeah.
and of course we weren't. I mean, even as I look back on it, I wasn't like, "Rawr,"
Yeah.
I wasn't, just yelling at them or even coming
Right.
down hard on them.
Challenging in a loving way.
Yeah. Because I liked them. I liked that,
Yeah.
that family for sure. But all that together kind of ended in getting
It did.
fired.
It did.
And, we've only been at 3 churches and then kind of a church plant that we never really got started.
Yeah.
But so we started the church and it went well, but small town and God kind of nudged our heart to go to the city. And the denomination that we were a part of, the religious organization that we were a part of, said, why don't you come to Little Rock, which is the capital?
Yeah.
That was exciting. And we got fired again.
We did. We did. Our early years of ministry was a lot of challenges,
Yeah.
a lot of difficulties. Yeah.
And that's how we ended up here, and this has been an incredible journey.
Yeah.
And
we've been here for 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And within that comes its own challenges.
Yeah.
That I think for any leader that
Right.
stays around any organization over a long period of time
Yeah.
is positive in some sense that it gives stability and
Right.
you show perseverance and
Yeah.
you're able to model, do you live out what you really teach and all those things. But then there's also it's like we live near the beach and we live near
Right.
Disney.
Yeah.
And you take both of those for granted.
Right.
And I think that, people know, hey, I can come next month or
Right.
next,
You've been here 25 years. You're probably going to be here next week.
Yeah. I remember talking to Bill Hybels, because to me, that's been the hardest challenge to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember talking to Bill Hybels, who, led this, one of the early just giant churches in Chicago about it. And, he had experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think, that's just one of the challenges. Everything has positives and it has
negative.
challenges or
Yeah.
negatives. And, that was one of those things. But, the thing I'm most proud of is, even though that happened to us twice, we never quit.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's something every leader has to learn.
Yeah.
Is perseverance.
Yeah.
I think that's difficult.
Right.
I was thinking about this scripture here that Paul says, and I think every leader, and especially if you're in ministry, says 5 different times, he's just talking about all of his pain, right? Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent the whole night and day adrift at sea. I've traveled on many long journeys. I've faced danger from rivers and from robbers. I've faced danger from my own people, the Jews, as well as the Gentiles. I've faced dangers in cities and deserts and on seas. I've faced danger from men who claim to be believers but are not. I've worked hard and long, enduring many sleepless nights. I've been hungry and thirsty. I've gone without food, and I've shivered in the cold without enough clothing to keep me warm. So he goes through that whole list of things and I think every leader goes through difficulties and challenges on their journey.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest part about that is he's writing all this down, but unless you've experienced it, you don't understand it.
Right. Right.
And I heard a pastor say the other day that, talking about leadership, whether you're leading a business or leading a church or, even a family, is like the leader puts on a weighted jacket and never gets to take it off.
Yeah. Right.
Where the folks who are, on the team or workers, they take it off when they can necessarily go home.
Yeah.
And every leader kind of takes it off at different times, depending on how much responsibility they have.
Right.
But if you're the lead pastor, or if you're the CEO or whatever, then you're
right. You're always wearing that.
You're always wearing that.
Yeah.
You're wearing that. I mean, how many times have we been on vacation and get a call, and there's either ministry that needs to be done or a problem that needs to be dealt with?
Yeah. No, I remember many times, and us actually turning around and coming home, whether that's driving or flying, because that's what we do, and as the leaders, you take on that responsibility,
Yeah, and if you're the manager, you take it on in that capacity.
Right.
But the hardest part, in some ways, is that people don't understand.
Yeah.
You want people to,
right.
feel
Want
your
some
pain.
sympathy.
Yeah. I think when it is we're talking about mental health, and really all these things that we're talking about come down to that. You think, well, what is mental health? And I think a lot of it is just the conversation that's going on inside your mind.
Yeah.
And is it a healthy conversation, productive conversation, or is it destructive?
Yeah.
And it can, when you go through all that Paul mentioned there, for others, it's, gossip or, just all the different things you deal with, criticism and lost pay and all that kind of stuff. It's like, what's the conversation going on in your mind? I can't do it.
Right.
I'm going to quit. It's not fair, right? All those destructive ones.
Yeah, because that's what our skin, our flesh wants to believe, And I know for me, when we've gone through those seasons, it's, I always go back to the calling, that God called us to this, and He's going to see us through it, no matter how difficult, no matter how challenging. So, for us, I know it's just going back to the calling. All those years ago, over 25 years ago, when God, over 30 years ago, when God called us. He nudged our hearts into ministry, and this is what we were created for. And, we could get out of it. We could do something different. Grass always looks greener on the other side.
Your dad's still superintendent.
He is still superintendent. But, when it comes to, at the end of the day, we know we wouldn't be happy doing that. And that would come with its own challenges. But because we're called to this. And so, I think for us, in ministry, it's just always going back to the calling that God placed on our life.
And I think that's true to whatever you're doing, is to see the opportunity, that that's in front of you as far as developing the people around you.
Yeah.
It's not just getting a task done, but especially as a Christ follower, if you're a Christ follower, the calling is bigger than that. It's to add value, and to disciple the people. And whether you're the manager or the CEO, it's like, am I going to just make donuts?
Right.
Or am I going to leverage making donuts to grow these, 21-year-olds that are frustrating me to death in the process?
Right.
And having that big picture mindset is because when you get, when that voice in your mind, right, what leads to mental confusion and mental distraction is you want to run away, or withdraw, or start again. I mean, I remember, and I don't know how every profession is probably different, but pastors tend to stay about 2 or 3 years. And I
then
think
move on.
And start again. Because it's like
thinking it's going to be easier. That the problems that I'm experiencing here, I'm just going to be able to get away. At this next place, it's going to be easier, and it never is.
Right.
It never is. It has its own challenges, and so no, you're right. I think it's all about persevering. Not giving in to those feelings or the what's going through your mind. Not allowing the enemy to whisper those thoughts into your ear. That the grass is greener on the other side.
And the challenge is always, the longer the challenge goes on, it's like if you're taking care of a spouse, or you're taking care of your parents, or a sick child, just depending on where you're at, the longer they're unhealthy, the harder it is to persevere.
Right.
If it's a sick, friend or a sick child or your boyfriend, and it's the flu. Right. But if it's a disease that is ultimately going to likely in their life, and it's a 5-year and 10-year journey, it's that much more difficult to continue every day to get up. Right. And I say that because I think we've gotten fired a couple of times. We've had plenty of criticism and all those things that happen along the way, but the other side has always been relatively quick. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we got fired at Mount Zion, but it wasn't too long after that to where we were able to travel around, and then we started a church, and it was really hard, but the church grew. So we built exciting buildings, all of that. Got fired in Little Rock, that was painful. We didn't know where we were going to go or what we were going to do. And we made a really important decision. We didn't go back. We kept moving forward. And we ended up here with young adults. And it wasn't too long, had no idea when we came. Pastor Dan left. We became the pastor. And of course, I was different than Dan. So lots of people left, but the church grew quicker than people leaving, got to 13,000 people or whatever. And then, especially since COVID, but, which now it's on 5 years. I don't know when you're listening to this, but it's been about 5 years. And that, there's been victories along the way, but the things we tend to look at, as far as the church moving forward, whether it's launching campuses or seeing people put on the God jersey or the attendance growing or those kind of things, has been really financially, especially financially, has been incredibly challenging. And it's continued. You know what I mean? And it's so much easier to focus on what hasn't gone well, as opposed to the lives that have been changed and all the great, the explosion of the school and just all those different things. And because I think that's when you start to have,
Doubts.
self, doubt yourself, doubt your calling, doubt your, all of those kind of conversations, which are not mentally
Right.
healthy.
Right. Yeah. I know for me, which I tend to naturally be a more cup half full. No, what would it be? Cup half full kind of person, where I'm very optimistic. But I always remind myself, like when I'm having when we're in a difficult season or even just having a difficult day, I'm always reminding myself to think of all the good stuff going on, all the great things that are happening. Because, there's always great things all around us. We just have to choose to focus on those things. That, my health is good today. And, we have a great family and, whatever it might be, just it's focusing on the good things that are going on around us, and not allowing because our skin naturally wants to focus on the negative. We can get one negative comment and, 50 positive ones, but what do we focus on the negative? I mean, I think that's our human nature, so it's really, being intentional about, when I have those difficult seasons, those difficult days to just kind of stop, take a deep breath and remind myself that there's a whole lot of good things going on, and that I need to focus on the good things that are going on all around me, So I think it's just, it's being there. But that's not always easy, when you're in a difficult, challenging season. That I'm not, it can come across as like, oh, it's so easy to do that, but it's not. You really have to be intentional and remind yourself, that there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good things.
It's
happening.
actually, the scripture says to don't worry about anything, pray about everything.
Right.
It says be thankful for what God has done, and then there's a peace that comes, or a happiness, or a joy that comes as a result of that.
Right.
And I think that's what we're all pursuing.
Right.
A mentally healthy person
Yeah.
is not dependent upon the circumstances.
Right. Right.
Because your mental health is not going to be healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
if it's dependent upon your circumstances, because they're
Right.
always
It's always changing.
always changing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're in ministry or a parent or a friend or
Right.
whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. So we kind of laid the groundwork today, kind of told you a little bit about our story. And, it seems like we just barely got started in even sharing our story. But what we'd like to do is answer your questions, right? Now, we don't have all the answers, but we do have a lot of experience. We've done a lot of things wrong.
We have.
And so if you would, just in the comments below, any question that you have about ministry, marriage, we've learned a lot. We've been married for going on 36 years this July. That's a long time. And we've got 4 grandkids.
We do. We went from 2 to 4 very quickly.
Yes, we did. So we would love to share with you what we've learned, the mistakes we've made, the things we've done right, and some of those outcomes to get real practical. So today we kind of shared the narrative, but we can only get practical if you ask a question. So in the comments below, jot a question about anything really, and then we're going to come back and do part 2. And on part 2, we're going to answer your questions, because like I said, we want to build a community. We want to do life with you. We want you to win, to embrace the greatness for which you were created in all the different areas of your life, because like I heard Nancy Beach say a long time ago, 1 is too small a number for greatness. Hey, if there's something we said that encouraged somebody or encouraged you, and you think, man, you know what? I know somebody that needs to hear that. Just click that button and share it with them. And maybe they'll have a question that we can get practical with in part 2. If you haven't hit the bell, be sure and do that so you know every time we put out new information. We've got a live stream that we do every Sunday night. We just kind of talk about the culture and give a perspective. We have a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. So if you need a little encouragement in your life, that would be something to check out. And then we've got a few leadership talks along the way too, and a book.
Yes.
It's not even a year old.
Not a year old. A great book. Amazing book.
It's incredible.
It is incredible.
And we did make one of the best-selling lists.
Yeah,
I forget
yeah.
which one it was, but we did make one of them. Thankful to everybody that helped make that happen. Hey guys, don't ever forget that you were made on purpose to do something of significance, and we're here to journey together. And so catch us next time, every Thursday at 8 a.m. A new one drops right here at the Troy Gramling Podcast. God bless and have a great day. Wait, before you go, if you're enjoying our content, check out this interview or this one here. They're both really good. And don't forget, subscribe. It's really important. We'll see you next time.